this meeting to order. This is our special call meeting on Monday, June 2nd of the Tullahoma Board of Mayor and Aldermen. Primary issue tonight is to look at our first reading of our budget. If you would, let's stand and have the invocation and the pledge. Father in heaven, we thank you this evening that we've all safely arrived here to consider the business of our city. At this time, we would especially pray on behalf of the Lewis family, Butch Lewis and the Lewis family and their loss of his wife. We pray that you would be with them and comfort them. We pray that you would be with us this evening as we make these budget decisions, and we pray always that you would watch over our first responders and our public workers out in the streets and towns and inside the city of Tullahoma, that you would keep them safe and bring them home each day. Be with us as we make these decisions. In Jesus' name, amen. Would you join me in the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The next item is roll call, and we have done the roll call electronically, and all are present with the exception of Ms. Cernobia McGee. She's not unable to attend this evening. At this time, it's time for comments of the citizens. I believe the Coffee County senior citizens want to say a few words. Please give us your name, and you can speak for up to 3 minutes.
Well, I'm Vicki, senior citizens. I've probably met lots of you. Just wanted to remind everybody that our needs are so strong, our financial needs are so strong this year. Since we lost 2 of our funding sources in June of last year, we have, the board has decided that we will close on Fridays just to try to cut back on some of our expenses. We've been there for 53 years now, and just wanted to remind that to everybody. If you know someone that can help us, we've got grant applications out, but losing those 2 sources has just really put a heavy, heavy burden on us. So, and please come and see us. Attorney Worsham was there the other day. We were so thankful. So just come and see where your money's going. We'd love to have you. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Let me correct myself in the prayer. I'm sorry. I apologize to Butch Taylor. I accidentally said Butch Lewis because I used to know him. Butch Taylor and his family and the loss of his wife, who's our public works director. I apologize for that name mix-up. Thank you for correcting me. Any other comments from citizens? So I forgot there's a public hearing at the top of the agenda, so let's have the public hearing at this time before we move into the regular meeting. A public hearing on ordinance number 1651, adopting the annual budget and tax rate for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2025 and ending June 30th, 2026 for passage on the first of 3 readings. So is there anyone here to speak to the annual budget and tax ordinance? Seeing none, we'll call the public hearing closed. Our next item is approval of the agenda. I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda. We have a motion from Alderman Glick, a second from Alderman Byrd. Is there any discussion on the agenda? It's nice and short this evening. If not, let's vote. That's 6 vote yes, so motion carries. So that brings us to new business. Ordinance number 1651, an ordinance for the city of Tullahoma, Tennessee, adopting the annual budget and tax rate for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2025 and ending June 30th, 2026 for the passage on the first of 3 readings. I believe that ordinance is in your packet, including all the budget detail. I would entertain a motion for discussion. So, motion from Alderman Byrd, second from Alderman Thoma on the budget resolution. Staff, do y'all want to make any opening comments here about the budget? Mr. Quick?
I think one of the things I would speak of is all the hard work. I appreciate Sue Paige Jackson and her staff for all they've done to compile these numbers, as well as our department heads. I think I've mentioned this to you as a board, but I know I definitely have a few of you. I think the operation of our city is very efficient right now. I don't think we have a lot of frivolous activity going on as far as extra money that we're putting towards things that could be put to better use. I think we've come to a point where the condition of our roads and a couple of other issues that are very critical to our future have been addressed in this. The other thing I would mention to you, and I've got a copy here, a resolution of resolution number 1976. It was approved by the Tullahoma Board of Mayor and Aldermen in January of 2024. And it was a resolution that asked for us to go back and try to come up with a detailed financial plan to establish a strategy, budget allocation, potential funding sources to put towards our roads. And so that's what we have focused on for the last 12 months is what can we do, how can we do it, and this is what we felt like was going to be the best solution for us. Not the most popular, but definitely the best solution for us to try to meet the needs. I think if you were to ask our residents, I think it would be almost unanimous that our roads definitely need some attention, and we have not been able to give that attention over the past number of years, and at some point we have to take that upon us, and that's what we've done with this budget.
Thank you. So as far as discussions of the budget, we're going to have a study session right after this for further budget discussion. So I think what I'd like to suggest is if we have questions during this period to just clarify what you're seeing in the document, if there's any questions you have about how it's structured, what's in it, that would be good now. And if we want to have discussion amongst ourselves about what to add or take out, we can do that in the study session a little more freely. And I did want to ask Mr. Quick just to verify and get everybody up to speed. So as far as the process here, we have 3 hearings, and we can change anything at any time. So we don't have to make a change right now to get it in the next hearing based after all the discussions we have tonight.
Correct. You can, up to the 3rd reading, whatever changes you make at the 3rd reading, those will be the final adjustments you could make. But up to that point, you can do it. Yes.
Okay. Anybody have any questions or comments at this time in discussion?
I guess my first one of these, and again, I want to state to Ms. Wilson, an excellent job. I've dealt with budgets before, and this is by far one of the most extensive I have ever seen, and she's always done a really good job. Well, I guess since I want to make sure I'm not putting the cart before the horse. You know, to vote on a budget before you've actually discussed it, my position would be I would prefer to discuss it and then vote on it. So I want to make sure that if you're asking me to vote on something that I really have a lot of questions on, I think it's a little difficult to do.
So, yeah, and I understand that. Now, the issue we have is we're also on a deadline. We were supposed to have the budget passed by June 30th, correct?
June 30th, our last our last Board of Mayor and Alderman meeting will be the 23rd.
Yeah.
So we'll have a reading today. Then next Monday we'll have our meeting, and we'll have a 2nd reading, and then a 3rd meeting on the 23rd, which will be the final reading and then adoption of the budget. But what you do have, Alderman Thomas, you do have the option to ask those questions, and Sue and I have come prepared to take a list of items that you need us to go back and provide more information on to be able to clarify, and then be able to bring those back to you at the next meeting. And then any additional questions, we can, continue to work with that. And by the way, that doesn't mean that we can't talk definitely between now and then if you have some questions or getting that information back to the board for consideration. So from my viewpoint, I see it as approve the budget as it is at the moment, have your study session, talk about it, and then give us direction on what changes you would like for us to make.
Yeah, I think of it as a process thing. I'm voting to move it to the next step in the process. If it was terrible and horrible, you might vote against it tonight, but if it's just, I want to make tweaks, then I will vote for it tonight and make my adjustments as we go. That's the way I think.
By that token, what if a majority of us voted no tonight? Would that kick it off?
Would we still have to have 3 additional readings, or just 3 readings?
3 readings total. I guess you could vote it down twice, and we'd have to come back with something in the 3rd reading that you actually like.
Yeah, that's the key, is we have to have something adopted and approved by the 23rd meeting. So if you voted it all down, that doesn't mean that we can't keep working on it. Our focus is to get it to something that everybody can vote for and support.
Well, let me ask you this. If indeed we voted it down, would we not be able to, or the mayor be able to call another special?
That's what they're saying, we don't have to, we just have to have 3 hearings.
Well, I understand
Three
that.
readings.
So it only has to pass
One time.
one time.
It has to pass on the 3rd reading. That's the key, is it must pass on the 3rd reading.
So it could fail on 2 readings and pass on the 3rd.
That's how it's occurred.
Yeah.
And so I think what we focus on is trying to get us to a starting point based on the feedback we've received from the board to get to you. But whatever your vote is tonight is not a final vote. Your final vote will be on the 23rd.
Well, I think that as we're contemplating this everybody should know that we just received like the completed version of this budget like 4 days ago. I know we've had several meetings over the last month or so discussing potential things that could be in their wish list and want list, but we never did see a completed copy until Wednesday afternoon. And with the ramifications that go along with it. So that's a very short period of time to come to a point where I want to vote yes on something.
Sure.
And of course, I want to vote yes and move things forward, but then again, a conscience would tell me not to vote for something that I wasn't comfortable with. So.
Let me ask you this. I didn't think we got the final version until Friday.
Or maybe it was Friday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the reason why I asked that, because I came in here Thursday to pick it up. Bless her heart, Sue was working.
I guess it was Friday.
It was
I
Friday.
lost track of days.
So virtually, we just have not had much of an opportunity.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I was out of town. Best thing in the world, I pulled it up on the city's
Well, to me,
website.
if you don't mind, to me, the thing
Sure.
about that is, even if we each individually had plenty of time studying, I was a little occupied this weekend as well, I was out of town, so I haven't looked at it in depth. But when we ever get in here and start talking amongst each other, then we're going to have to resolve
Yeah,
things, and that's really
yeah,
where the rubber hits the
yeah,
road. And so,
I got
and
you.
you know, if we had to call another meeting, we can. Hopefully, we won't have to do that, but we can.
Yeah, there's a lot of questions that I would have that might potentially take a little longer to answer than I know I've asked in the past several times and have not received yet an organizational chart or a breakdown of what employees are in what departments, what positions are filled, what positions are wanted, who's holding those positions and how much are they paid. And I think stuff like that is definitely something we need to look at in order to vote on a budget. And also, I've suggested someone to look at of hiring a firm to come in and look at our organization and see if the people are being paid correctly. Of course, we want them to be paid at the highest that they possibly can that they're worth, but we don't want to pay too much either. Right. So, I mean, those are all things that I think that we need to look at that might take a little longer, but I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that we could do that.
So, and you and I have had several conversations. I think the last conversation you and I had, and I don't know if it was a board meeting, but our next board meeting on the 9th is when I had talked about. That's when I would present that or put that a part of that. As far as salary information, that's something that we focus on through MTAS. They do a salary survey. The last one that we have received, to my knowledge, is from 2023. And I know there's one for 2025. I tried to hit it 2 or 3 times today, and it spun and spun, and I wasn't able to get that information. But that's usually how a lot of our salary adjustments and/or salary structures have been set up, is using those salary surveys. And then as we see an adjustment that might need to be made based off that survey, then we would do that. I will seek to get that for you as well. If I can, if I can't get it off the web, then I'll try to get it. Somebody send it to me from MTAS as far as the latest survey.
Well, yeah, I don't think I would really need that right now. What I was more talking about is at one point, and with something that couldn't be done this year, it would be something that would be in happen in next year. It takes a longer time. One time we had a private company come in and talked to all the employees, looked at the organization, and then they kind of made suggestions of
like
based on-
structure.
Yeah, it was a whole survey of the organization.
And I don't think that we ever got the results of that either.
Yeah, well, that
my-
was back when I was an
Oh,
employee.
It was
So
my-
that was
Since
several
we
years
were
ago.
in office,
Okay.
there was another one that we voted on to come in and see that if we were paying everybody
Yeah, it was the
correctly
same
and-
company, and it wasn't as an extensive of a survey as they did on that time just recently. It was kind of more to update what the work they had done in the past. But I think we're getting to the point now, I know we've grown, and things have changed around. People have taken on different jobs, doing additional jobs that, you know, so.
So to move the meeting around along just a little bit, that sounds like something we should put in the budget for next year to be done.
True.
That's what we want to
Yeah,
do.
that's what,
We could do that again. Alderman Glick, we did that, and I think it was 2023. It's been about 3 years now, I think, because it came back to Kenny and I when Kenny was the intern. And we did have Burris Thompson, a firm, come through, and they did meet, like you said, with the departments. And they went through the job descriptions, and they talked to I guess a sampling of employees, people in different positions from different departments, so they could get a better feel for how accurate the job descriptions were. And then they came back, and they did come back with recommendations, and then we brought that back, and the board did adopt that. I'm thinking that was 3 years ago, seems like.
Okay.
okay.
What other questions? Does anyone else have questions or comments at this time?
That was during the 8 months that I was interim CEO.
Okay.
We did that. It was actually, the past regime started it, and then me and Sue had to put it together and finish it.
Yeah, I think it was the same company that we'd used before.
It was.
And it was not quite as an extensive of a study, I don't think, was it, as they did the first time?
This time it was.
Okay.
They did an update in between, I think you're referring to, and that one was not. It was just, that was just sort of a update. This
Okay.
time they actually came out and met
Okay.
with people.
Yeah, and I
Recall
think
getting the
that,
results of that.
and I think that because I remember asking them to also include the insurance, like the benefits that we give in that, which
Oh, yeah,
they
we
typically
did.
didn't do, because we actually give our employees a really good benefit package, health insurance and things of that nature. So I wanted that to be included in as well. But that information probably would be pretty dated by now.
We do have a copy, I found, according to Sue, we can get a copy to you. I have not
We
seen
can
that
bring you back.
myself.
It
yeah.
would be interesting to see.
I think we have a
Excuse me.
PowerPoint we could get you, that we could actually email out the PowerPoint if you wanted.
If we have an actual report, I'd rather see the full report than just a PowerPoint.
Yeah, I agree.
We'll get that, we'll just send that to you by email between now
Yeah,
and
it's fine.
the next meeting.
Yeah. But I don't know if it helps us tremendously with this year's budget.
No, I don't think we kind of got, but that sort of thing is what I was getting at. But I think but that would help with this budget is to know what we have now and what
Yeah.
the numbers are for each position and things like that. I think that would help, because it would show the difference in, I know some portions of the budget have grown more than others.
Yeah.
And having those figures would answer the why.
Yeah.
Would that be, if you're fine, we have that, Lyle and I have worked on that. We have it prepared. Would y'all prefer us to email that to you ahead of the next meeting as well? Okay.
Yes.
That would be
Okay.
good.
Can I just ask one thing?
Yeah.
Traditionally, we've passed the budget in the first reading and then gone back and revised it. Part of the reason for that is that we're required by law to put a notice in the paper 10 days before the passage of the third reading. So I have to have something passed today to put into the newspaper as a formal notification. And then you can go back and you can do anything you want to on the second and third, but I won't have anything to put in the paper.
I don't understand, help me understand, why would it have to pass in order to put that notification in the paper, the third reading?
Because otherwise, it's not formal, I'm just making something up, more or less. If you don't formalize it by approving it, I don't have anything to put in the paper.
Do we now have a proposed budget in front of us now that's on our agenda packet already?
Yes, but if you decline it, then I couldn't put that in the paper as approved. It would have to be approved, so it was in some formal capacity to use it, and then amend or change.
So let's ask, to me, this is Robert's Rules question. This is not an up or down single vote on an individual motion where that if we turned it down, then we would have to have the people who made the motion reinstituted. This is not that kind of
That's what I was
situation.
asking,
So I don't understand why you can't, is that an MTS ruling or is that just the practice that we've had?
Well, if you decline this, then it will be voted down, therefore it wouldn't be something I could.
But that's what we're saying, since it's got 3 readings, it won't be voted down completely. It's not like making a motion that only has 1 opportunity. This has 3 opportunities to pass. If you put it on the agenda the next time, why can't you put that in the paper?
I can, but not till after you pass it once, so I wouldn't be able to put it on
Don't
in time.
think I agree with that unless I have an MTS ruling says why.
From my perspective, I believe that you will pass a budget on the 3rd reading. There's no doubt
Yeah.
we will pass a budget on 3rd reading. I have zero doubt that whatever budget that you pass tonight will not be the same budget that you will pass on the 3rd, meaning that's when we'll start making changes, additions, doing whatever you want to. I think what tonight does by passing it is just says, okay, now it's on the table for us to look at. But just know that at the end of the 3rd reading, that whatever you're going to pass is going to come from the bulk of this budget. From my perspective, just being quite honest, I think, not that the vote tonight is inconsequential, but I think passing it tonight doesn't mean that you agree with it or don't. It just means that now we have it on the table to now let's go in and let's start making it the budget that everybody wants by the 3rd reading.
I don't disagree with that, and I probably will, but I don't think it prevents us from making a public notice.
Mayor.
What if
Yes,
we,
ma'am. I'm sorry. Yeah, I should look to you first.
Under Robert's rule, it has to be read 3 times. It doesn't have to pass all 3 times. It just has to pass once. I think the way that we were talking about it originally is right. You guys could vote it down tonight and then come back and pass it, on the 3rd reading, and it would be totally fine. I think what Sue is saying is traditionally you put it in the paper that this has already been approved and we're going to have the 2nd reading or we're going to have the 3rd reading. You're probably going to have to reword it for it to be accurate, but you could still provide the notice legally. So they could, in other words, you guys could vote it down tonight, and you could still put the notice that we're going to have the 2nd reading next Monday. They could vote it down next Monday. You put the notice that we're going to have the 3rd reading, but you're going to have to change the language that says, like right now, I think it says it's for approval. And the next time, I think it's supposed to say this has been pre-approved, or this has already been approved on the 1st reading. This is going to be the 2nd reading.
I would have to see, this is it's a quarter page ad in a newspaper that runs a whole state formatted numbers based on this budget, which takes me about 8 hours to put together because of the way it has to be moved. It's got the school's prepared budget also, and therefore in the state format included in there, in the summary. If it's declined, then what I'm putting in is not something I've been authorized to do.
It never is until the 3rd reading.
I think what you're required to do is put the public on notice that we're going to have the 2nd reading and the 3rd reading. So we've used the same language every time, but I think you can change that language a little bit. Instead of it saying it's already been approved, you would just say you're putting them on notice that we're going to have the 2nd reading and the 3rd reading. But it doesn't have to be approved by this board 3 times or even 2 times in order to pass.
No, I'm just talking about the notice part of it.
But the notice,
That's
and the
what I
notice
was
is that we're going to have it read for the 2nd time or 3rd time, I think.
yeah, because you could be caught in we approve it tonight, then we don't approve it on the next reading. You're in the same boat. Because you wouldn't have something to put in there because it's not been approved. So I would yield to our attorney
Well-
and go from there.
Well, and I don't mean to undermine what Sue is saying.
No.
She's absolutely correct. We have to put them on notice for every reading, and it has to be published in the paper. We've traditionally, I think, used the same language every time because it's, it's been approved on the 1st reading, we're having the 2nd reading. It's been approved on the 2nd reading, we're having the 3rd. But we can tweak that language a little bit and still say, we're putting you on notice that we're having the 2nd or the 3rd meeting.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and I guess my summary comment on this is every alderman is free to vote yes or no on anything that comes before this board. We'll deal with it accordingly. We just got to get a budget passed by the end of June. So, all right, let's move on to other issues. Anyone else? What's that? No, not yet. We're still having discussion. So I think one of the things I said was, are there any questions anyone has about the content or questions about what things in the document mean? I had one question. Had a couple questions, if no one else does first. The salary, there's a comment here in the beginning of the document, the memo, cost of living adjustment.
What page, Mayor?
It's on the ordinance, at the first page of the ordinance, page 1. Cost of living adjustment for employees, this is what's currently in there now. Cost of living adjustment for employee salaries is 2.4%. And we don't have to do it right this second, but can we get a dollar total for what that is? That was my first part of that question. And the second part of the question is that COLA included in all, I assume it is, but can you just verify for me that the COLA is included in all the salary lines that we have here in the document? They are. Because Mr. Glick pointed out, there's a lot of difference between some of these departments in that number. And I know some of that's probably personnel, I know some of it's personnel changes, but we'll get that sorted out. But just wanted to clarify, so when you see values in there, almost none of them are 2.4%, so it's there, but they are included in it. So that's one of the things I just wanted to verify.
I have that. I do have that if you want it.
What's that?
The COLA and the step.
Yeah? I'm sorry?
The COLA is, the 2.4 COLA is $282,079. The step plan is $234,654.
What was the first number?
$282,079. And $234,654 for the 2% step.
Okay, thank you, that's helpful. And then just looking at the columns in the budget, I'm used to seeing it slightly differently, but I don't think it's going to be a big difference. So there's the columns in the middle, 2 columns in the middle. There's the FY #24-25 amended budget. That's whatever the last amended number was, right?
What page?
On page 8. Any of the pages, they all got the same columns, right?
Yeah.
But there's an FY '24-25 amended budget, and then we have an FY '24-25 year-to-date. But we don't have an FY '24-25 estimated final. But is there going to be, do you think there's going to be a big difference between our current amended budget and where we're going to end up at the end of the year?
No, I don't think there'll be that big a difference in where we're at because we don't have a lot of extra revenue. Sales tax is fairly flat.
Or expenditures?
Expenditures running fairly close. People are pretty good about reining them in and staying within what they have to.
The reason I asked that, and for the other, on the county commission, we always have a column that's projected. And then you can kind of look at what's the estimated for next year versus what we're projecting to do this year, plus what was in the previous year. And you can look at kind of 3 years in a row and say, are we growing or shrinking? And if we don't have a final estimate for this year, it can be kind of hard to say, are we going up or down?
What we do is we amend as we go, so that the departments make transfers. So what you're seeing right there is basically your projected.
Yeah, that's what I was assuming, but I just wanted, the county's kind of funny sometimes with some of the large personnel swings in the jail and the sheriff's department, and sometimes it can be quite a bit different until that final amendment to make everything come in line, so, all right.
So you're pretty comfortable that if we're doing a comparison to a certain extent, the 24-25 budget is a good guide?
That's what we use when we're looking at, and that's what the department heads use too. They're looking at where are my repairs going, where am I running high percentage-wise, and then we go through that too and look at, okay, what do we have to do to make this work?
But that's
what are
pretty
our
well
fixed
based
costs that
on
we
your
need to?
24-25 budget, correct?
Yeah.
Now, it wouldn't be the
I mean-
current, because you're not even finished with this year.
We use the current one for most of it, except for
So
things that are.
That's why I was asking, because
We can
it's,
use it.
how close is the projected
Yeah, I
one
got
to
you.
what we're going to really end up?
That's kind of what I was
It's very
thinking.
close.
So when you have the percent change here, that's comparing the amended budget versus the estimated budget?
Yes,
Yeah.
You amended it for 24-25, correct?
right, the
Yes.
24-25
Because you don't
amended
have-
to
okay,
the
Gotcha.
25-26 estimate.
Pretty cool.
That was the biggest questions I had, I think, just to make sure I'm looking at everything right.
What would be the, is there something in this year's budget that is a one-time expense that we're looking at spending that's not going to recur the following year, or is there, because, and the reason I ask that is right now, you're asking for a 20-cent tax increase, and you're using almost $1 million of reserves to balance the budget. Is that $1 million like a one-time expense? Otherwise, we're going to have to be using another $1 million out of reserves again next year. And shouldn't we just correct the situation by either cutting expenses now or raising taxes more? I just can't understand why we're using almost $1 million out of our savings.
So I have a comment about that.
If it's not a one-time
So that is a question that came across my desk earlier today, and I met with Sue, and I wanted her to explain how she views that, the reserve, and how we're using that in the budget, I think we've done that, I don't know how many years we've done that, but several.
Several. Usually, we've done it if we've had, like what Alderman Glick said, something on capital, like we went from paving being 350 to 700, and we used some reserves that way because we knew that was a big, a big long-term expense. And then we've used it when we've had revenues that were uncertain. For instance, in this year, we've had as high as double-digit sales tax some years. And we budgeted for 6 this year, and we're running right about just slightly under, slightly around it. So I think we'll make it, but it's dropped a lot. So we only budgeted for 4% in this year, and that's 4% from the budget. So I don't think we'll see really a big increase, but I think we may make what we need. So that's why you can't estimate, well, you could, why it doesn't have a very aggressive sales tax estimate in there, because the economy has been so variable in, say, the past 4 or 5 months, that we don't really have a good, solid track to go on and go more aggressively on our revenues. Because now what we will do is usually we monitor that, and then during the year, like say, usually around December, January, we look at where we're at and say, can we afford equipment? Or do we need to cut back? Some of the things we couldn't do in July, can we do them now? Or are we running behind and we really need to cave back on things that we had hoped to do? So that's usually how the reserve works, is that it sort of fills that gap
Now,
of
Can I
uncertainty.
ask a question, make a comment
Sure.
on that?
Yeah.
So let me make a comment first. So at the county level, we have this exact same thing happen every year. And I'm getting off the county commission soon. I guess that's the first time I've publicly said that in a meeting. But 6 years of budgets over there, we always ran a deficit on paper, and we always came out ahead, except maybe this last year it was a very small negative amount. So it was for the exact same reason. We were always very conservative with our revenue estimates and very conservative on the plus side with our expense estimates. And usually what got you was you couldn't staff everybody in some of the large departments, and you end up just not spending all that money. And so even though you'd start out saying, there's a couple years ago, we said we were going to be 1.4 million in reserves, and we actually ended up 900,000 to the plus. So that's one thing to keep in mind with this. Then the second part is really a question, what's our current reserve balance?
About 8.
About 8 million. So this is not a huge chunk of the reserve. And we've got our gold reserve our minimum reserve goal is what?
We keep about $1 million in a stabilization, and then we keep about another $1.5 million for cash flow.
So 2.5 million. So we've got some headway there, and the way we've handled it traditionally over there is, if it ever happens where it does go down, then the next year you start making adjustments and keep that into account. But you just don't know what your revenue actually is, and so it's just a best guess. Do you really want to start increasing spending or making cuts for something that's really uncertain? That's feedback I've got.
I have something too.
Go ahead, Ms. Wilson.
I guess I'm just a little worried because I know that our roads are we're behind on the roads, and we're never going to get ahead on the roads. And I understand the tax increase because of that, and we haven't kept up with that in the past years, by small amounts of increase to, we just haven't done that. And as far as the city hall, like the building, the structure is unsafe and unfit, and I understand that. But what I worry is that we're, by just looking at the figures on that, when the budget right now, normally an increase is going to be 2 to 3%. But when I look through on these salaries, we're upward in some departments of almost 20%. And I'm sure that there's probably a reason for that, maybe some like hirings or something, but, if we continue at that every year, then we're going to be, I think, in trouble. Well, we will be in trouble. And so I guess kind of telling on what Kurt was talking about is it would be helpful to see the structural chart and to kind of see, what the reason is for those numbers.
We
And
get
that's-
that with the changes.
That's some of the detail I want to go through in the study session as well.
Yeah. Well, you made the statement that our expected reserve is 2.5 million and we're at 8. Did I misunderstand that?
No, are required. What we
Our
require.
required,
There's a
is that
minimum you want to
a
hit.
government?
There's a
state-
minimum you want to put. to
Okay,
Yeah.
well, it's just good, which
Yeah.
are way ahead of what it is. So, in essence, the questions like Alderman Wilson is stating, we can address in our study session, I assume.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of questions here that I have, so I don't want to be,
If I may jump in really quick.
Yes, sir.
Just to make sure I understand, the appropriated fund balance, that's the general fund, correct?
Right, that's a general fund is what you're looking at.
So I think to answer one of Kurt's questions, if you compare page 24, the total expenditures, to page 9, the total reserves utilized, if you look at the 23-24, it was budgeted to be about 38 million. We ended up having $500,000 less in revenue, but then we spent 700,000 less. So we actually ended up in the positive, and it doesn't look like we touched the reserve
That's the
fund at all.
effect I'm talking about.
Yeah, and it looks like so far this year, this budget 24-25, we haven't touched any of the reserves there either, correct?
No, we used it in the beginning as interim cash flow when we didn't have the property taxes, and now I think we're covered. We're about running even.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that I did understand that correctly. And I thank you again, Sue. This is a lot of work to be put into this. And just a quick statement, one of the things talking to citizens that I've gotten a lot is, where can we make cuts? And after speaking with all the directors, I'd like to thank you all. John, running the airport as efficiently as you can. Eric, getting our tipping fees as small of an increase as we can, keeping the fleet running. Chief Sons, getting donations from the FBI and other organizations. Chief Pearson, your firefighters doing a lot of the work on their own, on their own fire hall. Excuse me, I'm getting over allergies. But I just wanted to thank you all for all of that.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments about just the structure of the budget, big scale, big picture questions about what's in it? If not, then let's go ahead and vote. So we have 4 yes, I can't count, 4 yes and 2 no. So this first reading passes, but of course, we still got plenty of work to do. So that moves on to the second item on the agenda for tonight. This one sheet. This is hopefully something quick to pass, but as you recall, number 2, resolution number 2024, a resolution to proclaim approval of private act to amend the charter of the city of Tullahoma, Tennessee regarding election compensation and qualification of city judge. Back towards the beginning of the year, we passed a resolution to try to get the city judge's terms aligned with the other elections, and we sent that off to the state, and they finally sent it back to us last week, and so we tried to hurry and get it on here because our elections director is going to be out of town next week, and he wants to try to get all this paperwork done as soon as possible. So can we get a motion and a second on that? Oh, there we go. Ms. Wilson and Mr. Toma, is there any discussion on that? It's going to save us a little money on elections and a little trouble. All right, we'll vote. 6 yes on that, so we can get that over to election office, they'll be happy to have it as quick as they can get it.
In fact, he's watching now and told me as soon as he heard approved, he would put everything in motion.
Good deal. All right, so with that, that'll adjourn our regular meeting, and we'll move into a study session. Anybody need a break at all?
My name is J.T. Northcutt. I have sickle cell anemia trait, and several members of my family have sickle cell anemia disease. People with sickle cell disease have sickle cell